microfinance companies since a decade. So we thought let us invite the top CEOs of the industry and let us discuss what is the current scenario and how this industry will prosper and how they will take up forward. So friends, I would like to welcome to all of you today morning, and the beauty of this discussion is that we have all kind of stakeholders in this discussion. So we have the microfinance founders, co-founder and their employees. Then we have rating agency players. Then we have banks. We have the rating agency, banks and NBFCs. So you see that and the people from outside the industry also. So the industrialists are also there who want to listen that what is happening in this industry. So this will be a very good discussion, and we want to keep it short and simple. And so, friends, today's panel is very, very important for us because all the people in the panel, they are basically the people who have wide experience in their industry since last more than 20-25 years, and they are veteran in the industry, and they have started their career with a company which is a large company, and then they have built up the company further, and they have reached to a top level, and after that they have started their own venture. So this is a journey which they have. So I think they are self-made people, and that it will help us to know that how they have reached this stage, and they are shining star for the industry. So because the companies which are they are having these companies, they are running this company, they are big companies which are growing very fast. So we need to understand how these companies are growing fast, and in this current scenario also how they are doing the business and all. So friends, this microfinance industry, as you know, it's a very, very important industry for our country because it's playing very vital role in the economy by way of financial inclusion, women empowerment, and we have this industry has come out many times with the difficult situations. So Andhra crisis happened when the industry was facing a lot of challenges, but in spite of all the challenges, they could come out very well. Then after this Andhra crisis, there was a crisis of demon. In the demon time also, this industry has come out with the better, I think, better growth and the more transparency and all. So we hope so that this time also this industry will, I think, come out with a more transparent, or I think more technology focus, and all these things will happen. We need to discuss on that part. But before that, I would like to just give you some brief idea about the statistics of this industry. So friends, the microfinance industry, basically they are funding to the unfunded actually. So they are the bridge between the banks and the low income group. And most of the borrowers are from the rural side. Almost 70% borrowers are in the rural areas. And they lend under JLG model or the individual lending model also. So currently this industry is having something around 65,000 crore of portfolio, and almost 97 MFIs are registered in India, NBFC. And the RBI is regulating this industry. So the RBI is monitoring on regular basis. Then they have SROs, so MFIN and Sadhan. This is the SROs are these 8 microfinance companies got the license from RBI of Small Finance Bank. So this is a roadmap for the microfinance company. Then one microfinance company got the small this universal bank license also. So this country, the microfinance industry has shown very good path to all the stakeholders. And in the past, the private equity investor or banks who have put the money, I think the most of the time they could get back their money, and the private equity investor had exited with a high return on their investment. So in total, the industry has, I think, given this good return to the all the stakeholders. And in spite of it, all challenges and all these things, this industry is doing well, and hopefully this will do well also. So you see the overall journey of this microfinance, the all kind of players are there. So the NBFC, MFIs are there, small finance banks are there, then even banks are funding also to the microfinance sector. Then the basically, but today we are talking about the NBFC MFI specifically because this is a discussion where we have invited the CEOs of the industry. So now I would like to invite the speakers or panelists So we have Mr. Sudeep Bandyopadhyay. Sudeep ji is a very well-known face in the industry, and otherwise also he is regularly coming on TV. If you have seen his capital market and other areas, I think are very important. And Sudeep ji having wide experience. He started his journey with the ITC, then he moved to Reliance Money as MD. Then he was the CEO and MD of Destimony. So he had played a very good role in the companies where he was there. And currently he is the group chairman of IndiTrade GRG Group and the director of microfinance. By profession, he is a chartered accountant. So Sudeep ji is running one NBFC, one microfinance company, and then I think he's planning to go into HFC also. So Sudeep ji, I would like to request you to please brief about your, the organization, what are you doing there and how you are managing the current situation, and then any message which you want to give to the industry. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ashish ji. Thank you for inviting me to join this forum. I think it's an excellent opportunity to interact with professionals from the industry. Couple of things I just want to highlight, and I will make it point wise. But before that, I just give a brief introduction to the organization which I represent today. Here is IndiTrade Microfinance. We are a microfinance company, NBFC MFI, registered with RBI. We have been operating in 8 states. We have about 180 plus branches, and we have close to 1,000 people on our rolls. We have been running the organization profitably. We are rated BBB plus, and we have maintained the rating and improved the rating over the years. As things stand today, I think what is most relevant for the entire industry, and I think the entire lending community, banks, larger NBFCs who are lenders to NBFC MFIs, they are all pondering and debating the question, and I will address that straight away from whatever our experience on ground is over the years. What happens to NBFC MFIs? Do they get saddled with a large bad debt post the lockdown gets opened? How does this play out as far as NBFC MFIs are concerned? Is it a repeat of that Andhra situation? Is it a repeat of that Demon situation, or what's going to happen? I will like to look at it in a slightly different manner. Look at what happened over the last 3 years. I think Demon is quite some time back, and Andhra, of course, is quite a distance back. Last few years, we have seen floods and cyclones in different parts of the country. I will talk about a state where we operate, Kerala. Now, Kerala had seen a devastating flood in 2018. And remember, when there is a flood, and at least in the Kerala flood, people lost their entire, houses, their livestock, so the assets which these people who we lent to were decimated. They became absolutely destitute. But I'll tell you what the experience we had. This flood in Kerala in 2018 happened in around August, month of August, and it continued till about mid-September. People who lost their homes and living in shelters, many of our clients, many of our borrowers, they were finally able to go back to their places where they come from in October, early October. And we had, like every other player in the operating in Kerala, we had large bunch of clients who were not able to pay installments. Obviously, the question of paying EMIs doesn't arise when they're not able to do anything. They've been moved to a shelter. But the entire outstandings, and this is what is most interesting, was cleared by 31st March 2019. So, over a period of 6 months, the people, got back to their places, started back from where they left, and they were able to clear the dues. The repeat of the same thing we saw in 2019. Again, last year, of course, the ferocity of the flood was not that much, but there was a flood in Kerala, parts of Kerala. Kind of similar pattern happened. People were moved to shelters, were not able to pay installments. But by end of February, mid-March, most of it, I mean, if we could have continued till 31st March, probably everything would have been cleared. but 95% of the outstandings were cleared by the people. I will also give an example of a state where I think some of you operate, Odisha. Funny, the devastating cyclone happened, and some districts between Puri and Bhubaneswar, they were primary hit. And these places didn't have electricity and basic facilities for about a month. Such was the severity of the cyclone. Obviously, the question of paying installment didn't arise, and they couldn't pay. But as I stand today, let's talk about up to 15th March, period up to which we were able to go in the field. Most of the people who were not able to pay installments during the cyclone period had come forward and cleared a major part of their overdues. The point I'm making here, Ashish and other friends, is that there is a difference between what is happening now and what happened during these natural disasters. During the natural disasters, people lost assets. There was actual significant loss. People lost their homes, people lost their livestock, people lost their shops or whatever they were doing. There was a physical loss of assets. But in spite of that, they came back, picked up from there where they left, and they tried to clear the dues as soon as they could. Current circumstances, fortunately, 99% of our customers haven't lost anything physically. They haven't lost their assets. They haven't lost their homes, livestock, or anything. Yes, their income generation capacity was interrupted due to lockdown. So we are extremely hopeful, and we are talking to the customers on a continuous basis. And I'm sure my other colleagues on the panel who run microfinance companies will share this. When we are talking to people, we are getting very, very good response. It's not that people are become destitute. And I strongly believe that microfinance companies who predominantly operate in rural areas will have very little difficulty in recovering the outstandings. Yes, there will be outstandings for some time, but it will get cleared over a period of time. We are not looking at an NCL, net cash loss, of a significant amount. That's my reading on the present crisis. And I think it's important that we as an industry communicate this view as much as we can, because I've seen some of the industry stalwarts, not from microfinance, but from other spheres of financial services, talking about major problem in microfinance. I think they haven't appreciated and fully understood the ground realities. The second point, which I think Ashish touched upon, and I like to mention, that what is the option for the borrowers we service? These guys were predominantly going to the money lenders. Their financial needs were being met by money lenders, and we all know what kind of obscene rates the money lenders charge. So if microfinance companies are not encouraged by the regulator, by the banks, and by the government, I think that's overall a disaster, because with a great difficulty, this industry has come in, and there has been a disciplined lending practices. And I can tell you, as Ashish was mentioning, I'll run many regulated industries. This piece is probably the best regulated piece in the entire gamut of financial services. Maybe because the regulations were very, much later than other segment regulations. So there was an opportunity to do a lot of good work. And RBI did it under the Maligram Committee's recommendations. So it's a very well-regulated industry. It's very well structured, and they're doing a fantastic job of alleviating poverty. If we don't do this, if microfinance industry, for a minute assume, was not there, I think it would be a huge disaster for the economy as a whole. And our poverty alleviation goals of the government will probably have a huge, huge setback. So we need to communicate this as well to the industry, that and pretty much everybody, the regulator, the government, at every possible opportunity, that whatever you say about microfinance, you may say that our lending rates are higher and this and that, but A, there is a rationale, that is why regulator has structured it that way, and B, what is the option for the guys who are borrowing? Banks are, I think, decades away from going directly and lending to these people. And we have to understand and appreciate. And why should a bank try and do that when there is an alternate mechanism available? Let the NBFC, MFIs, and other participants in rural India do this work and help alleviate poverty in a structured manner. Couple of other points I would like to make and end my this initial remarks. What do we need as an industry today to do and look at? I think couple of things are very, very critical. One is a collection mechanism which can work even in these cases of natural disaster or these kind of pandemic. Today, I can tell you we run NBFCs which have a lot of other segments. There are collections happening because of the simple reason that customers are repaying online. Whether it's an MSME segment, whether it's a micro digital lending segment, there are a lot of repayments coming. Unfortunately, in microfinance, we are completely dependent structurally on people going to the groups and collecting installments. While that's an excellent thing to do, and I believe that human touch is very, very important. In times like this, we also feel the need for digital intervention and hope that digital intervention starts happening. The challenges are there, and there are significant challenges. The customer segments we deal with are not tech savvy, but today there are ways and means of doing it. And I'm hoping and praying that when WhatsApp payment gets going, I think we will have a solution, because even most of our customers are familiar across India on WhatsApp and other mobile devices. So let's hope and pray that solution can come. And I'm sure, if God forbid there should not be any, but if there is any similar situation, maybe a couple of years down the line, and there are electronic payment modes available, a certain percentage of collection and recovery will happen in spite of these kind of all-encompassing lockdown. The last point which I would like to mention is overall regulatory and the industry scenario. As far as the regulator is concerned, as Ashish mentioned, our SRO, AMFIN, as well as Sadhan is doing a credible and commendable job. But I think somewhere at certain levels, the regulators are still, little not fully conversant of the role microfinance companies play. And in different discussion, it comes out that you guys use aggressive collection practices. I think this is a thing of the past. We need to explain to the regulator clearly, maybe take them to the field, and at some point of time try and take these kind of initiatives, so that the regulator understands also by actually looking at our practices where we are. Second point, I will also mention that whenever we are trying to attract investors in microfinance companies, there is an inordinate delay in the approval process. And I think that's creating a lot of confusion. If that process, approval process can be expedited, and there can be a structure whereby the regulator can do that in an expeditious manner. The last point I'll briefly touch upon, probably there is a need for consolidation. There are too many players. It's not a bad thing, but I think the way the industry is moving, the way the entire financial services in the industry scenario is moving post ILFS crisis, I think the need for consolidation is being felt. A lot of players are suffering because they're not able to raise funds, and there are suboptimal structures under which many players are operating. While it's not a bad thing as long as they can sustain, but the reality is, or I would say the writing on the wall is, there is a need for consolidation. So we need to be a little more flexible. We need to be a little more open to the idea of consolidation so that the industry overall gets strengthened. Thank you, Ashish.
Thank you, Sudeep ji. I think you have you have set the tone, or whatever you have spoken. It is really, I think, learning to everybody who is participating in this webinar. So I'll take only 2 points which you have just to summarize, that there is no loss of real assets. So I think this is a great message which we have given. I think we are discussing, we are talking to everybody since last 40-50 days, but nobody is talking that there is no loss of real assets actually. So this is a crux of the discussion, that practically the assets are there. In the earlier cyclone and all, that there was a loss of assets. In spite of it, the people have repaid the money and all. So this is a good hope. Consolidation, you have touched upon this point. I think I would like to take this point later on in our later discussion, but this is a very important point which we need to discuss also. So thank you, Sudeep ji, for your views. Now I would like to invite Vivek ji Vivek Tiwari, the MD and CEO of Satya Micro Capital. And as you know, Satya is a well-known name in the industry, and this company has grown multifold in last three and a half years. And Vivek ji has done wonderful job. Vivek ji basically ex Setim. He was COO of Setim Credit Network, and then he started this company. He's MBA from rural development and in rural development and management. So he is the person who basically who believes in rural development and management from his academic days only. So I think this rural development or the social lending and all is in your, I think, in your bonds. So Vivek ji, I would like to request you to please brief about your company, how your company is basically working. And one more thing which we like to understand from you, that you have, whenever you started this company, you have set up the new trend in the industry, that you have people are basically discussing they have to grow in the region, then they have to go to national level basically. But in your case, you have taken the mission where you have reached to the entire country in a short span of time. So how this model is working, because people would like to know that this Satya model is the right model, or we should follow it or not follow it. So people, I got many questions when I sent this invite to the people. They said that we want to listen from Satya that how this model is working. So please go ahead to it.
Thank you, Ashish ji. I think Sudeep ji has already discussed too many things about the borrowers. But about Satya, I think we are present in 22 states with 1,000 plus crore portfolio in last 3 years, 3 months. I think that is the journey so far. And having more than 50 lenders on board, to institutional investors, close to 1,800 employees working in 135 districts of the country. But definitely this model is cash burning structure in early phase, because in first 2 years we made huge losses. We added more territories, more branches, and we covered more geographies. But with my learning of microfinance and development field of almost 18 to 20 years, I have learned that the diversification is the key. Even in this lockdown, we are able to perform much better than many other companies. We are present in every state. We don't want to put more than 10% of our portfolio in any state. That is the thought process while setting this company. As of now, we are having highest portfolio 20% in one state, but we want to bring it down to 10%, and we don't want to put more than 1% portfolio in any district. That is the entire designing process of Satya. Satya is more driven by technology. Monitoring part is completely much better. It is human touch is there, but technology is also another strength that is bringing a lot of synergy in Satya. And decision making is comparatively democratic, but once as a team we take a decision, the rollout is something, means we don't want, we discuss while taking the decisions, but we don't discuss after taking the decisions. We implement it and see the results and come back and take the another decision after some time. We don't waste too much time in taking discussions on and wasting our time without any solution for 6 months or 1 year time. At a team, we sit for 3, 4 days, 6 days, 10 days. But once as a team, we have got some solution, we go in the field and implement it. We want to see the results. It may be success, it may be failure. Satya has set a tone for the cashless collections in the field. As a sector, we were after demonetization, many companies they tried for the cashless disbursement. But from day one, we decided to go for 100% cashless in terms of disbursement and collections. I think if Aadhaar verdict was, if it was favorable to NBFCs, I think we were the first MFI who were about to claim that we are almost 100% digital in terms of our collection, disbursement, and on-sourcing. So that is the key. But in current scenario, and in my learning of last several years, earlier during the microfinance, the discussion was that your processes are key. When I have seen the development of the sector since last 18, 20 years, and I have joined this sector. Almost the portfolio was less than 1,000 crores years back, means when the entire portfolio of the sector was less than 1,000 crore. I think less than 100 branches were there in all over the country. So in early phase, it was your processes are the key. How you are designing your process are there. After 8 to 10 years, we learned that your people are your key. Means when you are able to get your right team that who is going to accept the decisions from the top, and they are going to roll out almost in the same way. I think a cohesive team is required to build a good microfinance institution. And nowadays, in the last 3-4 years, we have learned that it is the technology is the key. So now we can say that it is your people, process, and technology, that is the key to develop any institution as of now. So we are blessed that we are in all these parameters. Satya is one of the best institution emerged in last 3 years. And because our journey was just after the demonetization, we have started our operational journey from 1st January 17. Office was inaugurated on 1st November, and after 7 days, the demonetization was there and everything was on hold. So, and if you go by the several crises in last 3 years, it may be the IL&FS crisis or liquidity crisis was there in the system, Mehul Choksi and many more, and the corona is the new. So I think I have learned that the lenders, they are having the money. They want to put the money with the good institutions. I was able to attract capital, 8 rounds of capital in last 3 years of journey. And recently, I would like to congratulate Abhisheka, who will be my next speaker. I think he has raised some capital from some investors, good amount of capital, close to 9 million capital. Even we are going to close another round of capital next couple of days. So we are in advanced stages, and having trust from your investors, your lenders in this tough time, I think that comes only because of your governance, your processes, your people who are going to execute on the ground. We can write too much theories in your books, and we can design whatever the processes we can design. The people who are going to execute these processes, I think if they don't believe on these processes, you cannot design any institution. You can grow up to certain level, but I think I have heard that many big institutions, they are the layoff is there, the reduction is pay is there, or some other activities are going in entire. It is not only the microfinance; it is entirely in every sector. But my belief is that if as an industry we say that your people are key in this particular time, we need to support your people. And when the crisis will be over, I think in next 1 month, 2 months, whatever the 3 months, it is only your people there. They are going to drive you, and they will bring you back to the normal. I think there may be few institutions who will be bounced back much faster than anyone else. And it is only because people who are able to transform from physical to digital or phygital, and also those who are having the people who are going to execute your part on the ground. So balancing these two, I think that is always a challenge. But I think we are lucky enough that in last 2-3 years collectively we have we have decided the task. The team has taken a leadership team. They have taken a decision. The board has guided in a right manner, and luckily, I think we are able to grow. And even in this crisis, I think the today's panel is quite vibrant. We all three are almost new age institutions. Sindhuja, IndiTrade, and Satya, we are almost 2 to 3 years old institution. And within the segment, I think all of us, we are able to grow than almost many other players who are working in the sector since last 10 years, 12 years. It is only because whatever the thought process and understanding and learning we are bringing in building the sector, and also creating right team which is going to execute on the ground. That is the key for success of all our three, I think.
Thank you, Vivek. You have given the one very good message: people, process, and technology. I think this is very important. I have seen it also. If you remember, in setting days, we were going to the field with the banker. I think you had gone with me also 2-3 times, and we were discussing these things, that people are very important. And you have built up a large team in Satin also. So great. I think you have built up a very good organization. we'll discuss on this part also, this whatever equity raising and all that you have done. So this will touch upon also. Now I would like to invite Abhishek ji. Abhisheka ji, first of all, congratulations to you. You are very, I think, quite young organization, and very recently, I think in this week only, you got the private equity investment also. That is a great achievement. So thank you very much, and congratulations to you. Abhishek ji is also a known name, and he started his journey with, I think, ICICI Bank, and then he was the co-founder, part of founding team, Small Finance Bank. So he has seen the journey from the bank to an MFI, from scratch, building up this organization to the Small Finance Bank, a CFO. So, and now he started Sindhuja. It's a young organization in the entire microfinance industry, but I think this name is floating everywhere. Everybody is talking, who is Sindhuja, who is Abhisheka. So I think I thought, let me invite you for this discussion. And the new entrepreneurs, even the old people who are in the system, they want to, they're eagerly waiting. And friends, I think you will, I want to thank you to all the participants. We are getting lot of, I think, registrations. And this is a limitation, that we kept it for 100. Actually, we were not hoping that there will be more than 100 people, but I think a lot of people are in queue actually. So I think all of you are basically star of the today. So that's why they want to listen you. And so Abhisheka ji, over to you. Please brief about your organization. What is the, I think the success which you have got? What are the reason for that? And how you see this current scenario? Because you have seen all the phases. So how you see this current scenario, and how this industry can come up again on its feet. So over to Abhisheka ji.
So thank you, Ashish ji. Thanks for the congratulations. And I think Sudeep ji and Vivek ji has rightly set the tone and the context for this webinar. And I'll just briefly touch upon the brief journey of Sindhuja and what are our expectations from the regulator and the current liquidity situation. So as you know, Sindhuja is one of the youngest in this fold, started just 2 years back. In fact, we started on 30th April 2018. We just completed 2 years. And in these 2 years, we have seen two big upheavals. One is the immediately just after we got the license. In fact, after getting the NBFC license, it's only 1.5 years. So there was an IL&FS crisis, and now this is the COVID. So two upheavals in last in fact, 1.5 years we have seen. But today we are 175 crore AUM spread across 5 states, and we have around 80,000 borrowers. And we raised 2 series, means capital from 2 institutions. The Series A was with Carpe Diem Capital, and this happened when we visited Carpe Diem for the first time. Our own book was 0, because by that time we did not even have the NBFC MFI license. We were expecting it. And while on my way to Carpe Diem's office, I was a bit nervous, because if once they asked us, what is your own portfolio? Means I thought I would cut a sorry figure, but they were aware that we started with the BC business as we were waiting for the MFI license. So that was when the conversation started, and that was the day when this IL&FS crisis had come. So I thought that the whole discussion will shift to the IL&FS, but thankfully Carpe Diem showed confidence in us, and also they were the first time investor in any financial sector, leave alone microfinance. Still they showed confidence, and this is how the Series A of 25 crores was done with them. And then the Series B we just closed, and you would have seen in the press release. So we just closed amidst the COVID crisis, Series B, and another marquee investor, NMI, chose to invest in us, and along with the new investor, Carpe Diem. So that gives you double happiness when your existing investor shows confidence in you and they are ready to put in more money. So again, Carpe Diem also decided to invest. So these 2 rounds takes our total equity to around 100 crores. And with this, I think for the next 1.5 years, we are poised to grow if the situation, the COVID situation becomes normal. So that is the brief journey of Sindhuja in the last 1.5 years, to be precise, once we got the NBFC license. And with regard to the rating also, I think we made a debut with a minimum investment grade. So I'm thankful to the rating agency also, which showed confidence in us. So recently we got rated as a BBB minus. That was our first rating with the rating agency. And so we got into a minimum investment grade. And this FY 19-20 has been our first full year of operations. And I'm happy to share that we are in the midst of closing our annual accounts also, and we would be profitable by more than 2 crores in this of the first full year of operations. So the thrust was basically on both the top line as well as the bottom line. So we, as a strategy, we thought that we would do a very balanced approach as far as top line and bottom line is concerned. And therefore, even in terms of expansion, we moved to 5 states with around 56 branches. So we kept the, as Vivekji was taking a leaf from him, we decided to diversify since beginning only, because later on you feel very difficult once you realize that you have put too much egg in few baskets. And then even if you want to diversify, it will be very difficult, because they would be your mature clients who would go in for larger amount of funds. So we decided that in the first go, not as spirited as Vivekji, but still in 5 states we have gone. And so we maintained a balance between the top line and the bottom line. So regarding 1.5 years of our journey, our top line is around 175 crores and a profitability of more than 2 crores. So we would be able to wipe out our whatever losses also we had in last year. So on a cumulative basis also, we would be profitable. And that is because of, I think, a couple of reasons. One is because of the excellent portfolio quality we have. Our part zero is, I think 0.14%. And along with that, I think in terms of the cost rationalization and all those things, we have, and also we have tried to use a lot of technology. So the system, the onboarding of clients is totally paperless. We do it. And what one mantra we follow is that we will not allow 2 or 3 things, 3 approaches to work in a company. Like, for instance, the day we decided on the first day itself that we will go with a cashless disbursement, because at that 2 years back, many of the organizations were having 70-30 or 80-20 type of disbursement in terms of cash and cashless. But in spite of resistance from the field, we decided that we will have only one approach, and that is cashless, and we don't mind losing customer, because the moment you have 2 or 3 things parallelly running, it's a human tendency that people who are accustomed to what they have been doing, they will choose that, and you will not be fully able to implement. So we thought that even if we lose 5% of the clients, we don't mind, but we will go only cashless. And I'm happy to share, I think till date we have not lost a single client because they did not have an account. So it is only when we came to the field we realized that. So that was one. And in terms of the onboarding also, it's totally paperless. So, and on a tab based. And one thing which we tried to build in the company and also tried to advocate through MFIN forums also, Sugandh and all those who are from MFIN, they would know that we started doing electronic checking of the KYCs, because talking to many of the lenders, we found that around 20 to 25% of the KYCs are not original. And and this not only happens in microfinance, it is happening in other sectors also. So this was the first step we took, that we will start electronic checking of the KYCs to verify whether, because I think if 2 of the things you do, half of your work in microfinance as far as credit underwriting is there, is over. One is, the first thing we start is, first you check whether the KYCs are original or not. And that also is done online, so you don't have to waste any time. And the second after that is you do a credit bureau check, which almost all of us do. And that decides whether the borrower is lendable or not. And then you physically go to the borrower's place to verify that the other things, means once you have made up a mind that the client is lendable, then you verify the other things. So these are the few things which we have tried to do in the system. As far as Hinduja is concerned. And because of this, currently we have more than 15 lenders in a short span of time and 2 institutional investors. As far as now coming to the macro level, if we see, as you said, that Sudeep ji raised points on demonetization and even the Andhra crisis, and after that the ILFS crisis. But what we want to, I want to share it that I think this sector is very resilient. Even in spite of all these crises in the past, even the Andhra crisis was localized to only Andhra Pradesh, but the lenders took, some of the lenders took a very knee-jerk reaction. They stopped lending to almost all MFIs across the country. Even during demonetization that happened. But in spite of that, we have not seen a single good MFI failing. So, and they have all paid back to their lenders in spite of all these crises. So we have seen that the sector, and also as far as the borrowers are concerned, Sudeep ji raised that the floods in Kerala. I would like to say that the floods in Bihar last year was very massive, and we had a predominant presence in Bihar. And when I'm happy to share that I did not face a single day, I can underline again, a single day default of any of my 35,000 clients at that point of time, even if there was so much flood. And especially in the eastern part of Bihar. I come from eastern part of Bihar. I know the culture and all those of that place. And I could see, and I was myself surprised that not a single day default of 35,000 clients in spite of such a massive flood. And even after demon, the regions in which we are present, Bihar, Eastern UP, Jharkhand, these have shown a very good result even after demonetization, and they bounced back very, very quickly. The only good thing now in this, in COVID, if I try to see some of the good points here, I'll see that the regulator is much more active this time. Because if you see as far as the liquidity is concerned, there's so many things, and it's not only liquidity for the general NBFCs. You could see that the governor, Reserve Bank, or the finance minister, they have taken so many times the MFI names separately, apart from the NBFCs. And they were not only satisfied at pushing liquidity to the sector as a whole, they also wanted to see that the liquidity goes to the small and medium company like ours. And that is why a slew of measures, the TLTRO2 was in that direction. Then the special, the refinance facility through NABARD and CDB of 50,000 crores was also a step in that direction. Only yesterday we saw 2 big measures for NBFCs, MFIs and HFCs. The special guarantee scheme, where 20% of the first loss guarantee is taken by the government of India, and that the investors can invest in unrated papers also. So this is especially true for a very, very small company which is unrated. So they can also access funds. And then there is around 30,000 crore of special liquidity window. So all these measures means not only to NBFCs, but also the liquidity, the government and the regulators want to see how the liquidity is flowing to the NBFC MFIs, and even within the NBFC MFIs, how the smaller players are able to access. And that is why the TLTRO2, the special refinance facility, or the special guarantee scheme, all these measures were taken by the government and the regulator. So that is one good thing which we see as far as the regulator is concerned, in terms of the liquidity which they want to provide to the system. Because the regulators and the government also realize that microfinance institutions are these are the players who are the last mile service providers. And during post-COVID time, when many of the people, there is news that many of the people have returned back to their villages and towns from cities like Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore and all. So, and these are the people who would like to restart their business in their own area where they belong to, the villages and towns and cities. And it is at this point of time, I think the microfinance institutions can play a big role by providing access to credit so that they can start their business if they choose not to go back to the cities. So they can start. And this is where I think the government and the regulator have realized this. And therefore, there's so much thrust on providing liquidity to the sector. As far as our expectation from the regulator is concerned, I think they have done enough. But as a human tendency means you always aspire for more, and which we feel that the Reserve Bank of India, after announcing all these measures, they should also keep a close watch on how these measures are being implemented at the ground. They need to see whether the fund intended for smaller players are actually reaching them or not, or it is being taken by the big, only by that there is interest among the lenders for only the big players. So that they need to monitor very closely. Apart from this, there's a lot of other, some of the points like the moratorium which they gave for till 31st May, from March till 31st May. I think that if not more, they should extend it up till 30th June, because March already the announcement was done in the last week. By that time, almost most of the payments had been made. So if that can be extended till 30th June, I think that would be a great thing. Another, they could start a special liquidity window directly. The RBI can start directly, and where microfinance companies and other NBFCs and HFCs can have a direct access. And in terms of the asset relaxation in asset classification, I think the regulator should be more flexible in that, and they can extend till 30th September, so that those who are in genuine distress, I think they can be benefited as they would not be classified as NPA, and they can access further funds. So, and the last but not the least, I'll say as far as the permission from the regulator, as far as equity raising, when you raise equity beyond a certain percentage, you have to seek RBI's approval. I think there the RBI need to give the approval very quickly, especially if a certain investor has already made investment in last 6 months or 12 months in any of the institutions. So that means that the diligence on that investor has already been done by the regulator. And therefore the process of approval will be quick. Otherwise, in many of the cases, either the term sheet expires or the investor loses interest by the time we have seen last year, I think one of the MFIs got the approval just on the day when the fund life was expiring, and therefore they could not get the fund. So therefore, from the regulator side, I think these are the measures. If these taken together, I think the prospect for this sector has always been bright. I think post-COVID, it is going to be much more brighter, because this is the time when you need the services of the last mile service providers, because many of the people who have returned back and want to restart their life, want to start a new business, it is the microfinance institutions which can help them by providing, because we know these people have all the talent and skill. What is lacking is capital. And if timely capital is provided, I think that would go a long way in serving the underprivileged, and it would help in also in the financial inclusion agenda of the government.
Great, Abhishek ji, thank you very much. So nice of you. But I think you have rightly told that the regulator has done enough. So it's a good sign that industry is thinking that regulator has done enough, but now the implementation should be proper so that the money should reach to the right people and the right way. So great, thank you very much. And now I would like to invite Bhatt, SS Bhattji. Bhattji is a development banker. He started his journey with Canara Bank and he was CGM in priority sector in the Canara Bank, and then he moved to Ananya Finance as MD and CEO, and currently he is the CEO of FWWB, Friends of Women World Banking. So I think he has seen all the phases as a banker, then the CEO of a NBFC where he was in a big way. Then now he is part of FWWB where they are doing a lot of capacity building, hand holding to the sector, and they are lending also. So I think nobody can be better than you, WhatsApp. I think whatever you have the experience in the sector and as a banker, sector, and then the MFI, this NBFC, and then FWB. And I think Abhishekaji has given a lot of food for thought to you regarding this regulator, the special window, then moratorium. So we would like to disinform you about the FWB. But what is the WWBA? What this organization is doing, and how do you see this current situation? And then Abhishekaji has given this some points. So as a banker, we would like to understand from you whether these things are possible. And the RBI, this FM has announced a lot of measures and all. We need to understand whether these measures how they can reach to be the ultimate beneficiary. So please, sir, go ahead and over to you.
Thank you, Ashish ji. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. First of all, congratulations to you for selecting 3 eminent panelists. I am the odd man out in that because these are the outliers.
No, sir, you are most important for us, sir.
No. These people are the outliers and outperformers even during the challenging times. See, Vivek Tiwari, during the demonetization time, he showed that yes, even during the difficult time, you can build a good institute. Abhisheka, you see that one is demonetization. Then during this current crisis also, he has shown that you can raise the capital, even if it is a small organization. And Sudeep ji, anyway, the industry stalwart, I did not tell anything. When these 3 stalwarts who have got very practical experience and who have been able to build institutions and show to the public that they are able to do it, I think I am an odd man out here. But it is an opportunity for me because I am heading FWWB. Maybe FWWB is known to all in the industry. FWWB has been the mother of microfinance. I can say that the sector creator of microfinance sector in the year 1982 when it has started with say almost 50 to 100 women starting the microfinance business. But now FWW will be very glad to see that it has reached, the number of women who have been reached is 50 million. That's one thing. That's a great satisfaction for FWWB in initiating and in supporting the nascent organizations at that point of time to build this new initiative and to support this new initiative. And these institutions have taken that right path, and in reaching the maximum number of women, say over 50 million women have been reached as of now, or 55 million women have been reached in this task. That's a great task. Second one is about the microfinance sector itself. People have been discounting the microfinance sector over and over again. But this time, if you see, both Government of India and the Reserve Bank of India, even in the first day itself, they have been able to recognize, yes, there is a sector which is microfinance sector, which is working for the last mile customer, which is working for the women, and which is working for the poor. That sort of recognition itself is a great achievement for the sector. I think FWWB, Vijayalakshmi Das would have been there. She would have been much happier to see this development in the industry. But as an organization, definitely I acknowledge this effort by, say, Sadhan and MPhil to reach because unless you cry, mother will not give the milk. Therefore, we have to be crying for real things which we need. Having said that, there are, both Abhisheka, Vivek Tiwari, and even Sudeep, you also have mentioned. I would not like to touch on those type of things. I would like to cover, what has affected after COVID-19. COVID-19 is really one of the unprecedented events happening in the industry, and which has affected mostly the rural and the poor. The most affected people are the rural and the poor, which we are catering to. In here, if we see, the major thing which has affected is the supply chain disruption. The people have not been able to earn their income, cash flow is affected. Second one is they are not able to maintain their operational costs, the microfinance industries. That is the thing. When you say at the paying ability of the customers have difficulty in paying the installments because they don't have any income. They have not been able to start the business. Their business have been closed. But in the agri sector also it was happening because many of the mandis were closed. Rabi harvest was going and people were not able to sell the produce. But fortunately, government recognized that immediately and at least started partially opening the sector for these types, which has helped greatly in making that. Third one is the collection process, which somebody mentioned, where the collection process, see, I think we should thank demonetization in the hindsight, because unless demonetization would have been there, we would not have gone digital. Many of the organizations would not have taken this digital route, or even customers, or even the people at the ground level would not have taken this mobile banking or internet banking or any other, this Paytm would not have come, PhonePe would not have come to that extent. But now, even a common rural woman, I was seeing in Tamil Nadu when I visited one of the FPCs and microfinance, the women were having smartphones. Almost 40 women we met. All the 40 women were having smartphones, and they were able to know how to transact and how to operate the smart. That is a great revolution which has created. I think in the hindsight, we feel that yes, there are events which are coming for the betterment of the system, betterment of the our processes. That is one great thing which we have achieved. When the third one is the collection process I was mentioning. Collection process, as Abhishek and both Vivek Tiwari told, and there was some question also, how you have been able to collect despite during the disruption. I think in that way, because Vivek Tiwari, this company, Satya Micro Capital, was having on the digital mode, they were able to collect. And even to some extent, Abhisheka was also able to collect because they had through the Nash route and also other technology system. Therefore, they were able to collect the money from the people. That is a good development. And when you are operating, I think you need to see the systems, the processes, and what is coming there in the future. We need to understand how it is coming and how we should prepare ourselves. I think both three organizations have shown how you should see the future and start your operations. It is not that copy paste. It should be different from the traditional one, and see that is developed. The next thing what I would like to take is the collection process still has to be digitized. I think that should be the MFI players have to tie up with either fintechs or the payment banks or somebody else to see that their customers, because now the challenge is you cannot, the field officer cannot go to the group. He cannot, because social distancing norms are there. You have to have the sanitizer, you have to have the mask, and all those things are there. If even something happens, then the district administration would hold the microfinance company's director or the managing director responsible for such labs. Therefore, we should be very careful. In that way, it is definitely a great initiative to improve the collection process to the digital route, either through mobile banking, because in some of the systems we see, you get an SMS, it asks for your payment, you press the link and pay the amount. That sort of SMS system to the women, and give some training, even online training through videos, through YouTubes, that sort of training, and ask the master trainer to, because now Zoom is there, other sorts of technology platforms are there to train the women. In that way, that training also definitely would be helpful in bringing the digitization more powerful, more adoptable, and also more people friendly. That is the second one. The third one is about the migrant laborers. I think this has been one of the major issues in our country, the migrant laborers. Microfinance industry, if I understand, I was reading somewhere that about 40% of the clients are the migrant laborers. That means these people whom we are serving are going out either for a short term, or they are going on for a longer period of time, 1 year, 2 years, and all those things. Now their disruption has happened because they are coming back. Large number of people, influx is happening in UP, influx is happening in Bihar, influx is happening in Odisha, in all other places this is happening. How to cope up with their, see, one is they are losing the income. Whatever repayment you are getting from the external income would not be there. Second one, it will be an additional burden here with the same level of earlier income which you was to having earlier before migrating. That and burden on the family also. What he will do, whether he will be starting a new business, whether we should see some sort of enterprise, whether there is a scope for starting that, or otherwise I should move, or I should move back to the city. Maybe it will take some time for the migrant laborers to take a view on going back to the cities when to start their enterprise. In that way, definitely that aspect the microfinance companies have to understand. I think this is a segment where we need to address, and their requirements have to be understood. Their related products have to be developed for them. See that they are being helped now, but if you are not taking care of them, then the family would be again in distress. In that sequence, we need to understand that. The next one is about the migrant laborers itself who are setting up enterprises in the towns and cities. In those places, they might be finding it difficult to say purchase assets or starting the new business. At that point of time, definitely the local one should try to help them to start their business if they are going back, and if they are making that attempt to start their business again. This is the thing which has to be done by the microfinance companies. Coming to the liquidity support, what this one now government, as I told, there has been sufficient lobbying by the Sadhan and also MFIN and other industry bodies, even FIDC and other NMDSB bodies have been able to convince the government and Reserve Bank of India. But there, the government has got right intent. The Reserve Bank of India has got right intent. Now, the TLTRO, out of the total corpus, this much has to be earmarked for smaller NBFCs and microfinance companies. But actually, that is not happening. Banks feel that the smaller NBFCs and all those smaller companies are high risk, therefore we are not able. But one lesson we have to learn from Vivek Tiwari and Abhisheka and even Sudeep also, that if you are efficient, if your processes, systems are good, and if you are showing consistent results, and your social impact is intact, if you are addressing the social impact also, definitely you can fight with the people to see that, yes, if not once, twice, you go and get that whatever the requirement. But having said that, there is one more need where these type of liquidity facilities provided by Government of India. TLTRO has not been able to reach the microfinance because of the rating, because many of the banks are having AA rating as the minimum hurdle. But most of the MFI companies or smaller NBFCs with less than 500 crores have, say, about less than BBB. Maybe some of the companies have. But the BBB companies also, there should be some relaxation to the regulator. We should ask them, at least the BBB companies or even BBB minus or those who are in the BBB category should also be supported depending on their internal processes, systems, what is their governance system, what is their ethical standards. Looking to this, I think we should lobby for that with the regulator to see that, yes, this is one area where we should work, and smaller NBFCs and MFIs have to be helped. The second thing about the regulator is about the yesterday's government announcement of 30,000 crores of 100% guarantee and 45,000 crores of partial guarantee scheme. In the 30,000 crores also 100% guarantee is there. In that way, when 100% guarantee is available for the bank, the risk weight of total assets and their capital charge would become nil. In that way, banks would be definitely interested. But I think Sadhan and MFIN should play that these are the smaller NBFC MFIs, these are the smaller NBFCs who are doing very good work in the field. They're at least the social impact part, how they have been achieving and how they have been. Suppose there are some, yesterday I was seeing there are some 96 smaller NBFC MFIs who have a portfolio of 5,000 crores. Out of this, mostly 50% have not been able to raise any capital or any debt in the last 1 year. What is their position? Suppose if this lockdown continues for some more time with restrictions and other things, what is their position? In that way, those people have to be identified, or they should be advised. There should be advocacy for them that these are the gaps in your system, or why not you, as Sudeep is told, consolidation, whether there is a provision or need for consolidating among these people. If they are working in, say, nearby states, contiguous states or districts, whether they can merge themselves with some sort of understanding that, yes, or they can federate into a bigger organization. Some 10 of NBFC MFIs or even NGO MFIs can get together, like SNG Federation type of. A federated body would definitely bargain for them to get either resources or equity. That is the thing I would like to see that come. The third thing is about the transparency in these operations. As Abhishek was mentioning, the RBI announces, government announces, but whether how many people the smaller NBFC MFIs are solved, within that also the better ones will get. They may be doing good work. The smaller ones, they may be doing good work. But again, within that, suppose if there are companies, 10 companies which have triple B minus, triple B plus, and triple B rated, banks will normally select triple B plus only. In that way, how to make these triple Bs only to be eligible for credit? That also we need to work if they are in need. That we need to find out a formula where we should liaise with them and see that banks also take care of that. The third thing is, other day in one of the other webinars, there was a concept called micro equity. I think Vijay Mahajan was mentioning about the micro equity for the sector. I think that micro account for the microfinance NGO institution and also smaller NBFCs, so that it works on a P2P lending platform like a thing, which is able to looking at the work they are doing with the women, the distressed people, and also the last mile people in the and the social impact they are creating. Now, if you see these smaller microfinance institutions during the COVID time, how they have been helping, including the ration distribution, medical distribution, and also they're providing them this sanitizers and masks and all those things. And many of these women have been able to. Yesterday, Prime Minister was mentioning about the mask and other kits preparation. These SHG women and these microcredit women have been able to do that. That is the strength of this sector. I think we should definitely take advantage of these type of achievements to see that strength of the sector, resilience of the sector, and how we have been doing. With that, definitely we should be able to bargain, and that should be with the banks. From the bank's perspective, definitely the NBFC after the IL&FS crisis, there has been slowness in the credit flow to the sector because NBFCs were put on the negative outlook category. Even the rating agencies also do put that. How we can bring that positiveness now with these government initiatives, that is one thing. But unless as players, industry players, we task out what are the things to be done, how to make even the co-partners also as performers. The great people like Satya and Abhisheka, if they are able to mentor some of the smaller NBFCs or smaller NGO MFIs, no, you do like this time to them. This is how we have done. You need not do it overnight. You will do it over a time so that you develop at least in the next 6 months or 1 year period of time. You can come to the mainstream. I think with that, I will end. If any questions are there, definitely I will be able to take it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think you have given very good suggestions. This federation for small MFIs, I think it is needed that the same thing, I think 2-3 days back, that it is important NBFC or the small and they can, whatever they are doing, they can continue it also because they are reaching to far deeper than the other MFIs. So that's a great thing, sir. I think, and other than that, you have given a lot of other suggestions. And I would like to thank you to Sadhan and MFin for their efforts where the RBI or the governor or the government has basically categorized, specifically MFI section in this yesterday's FM discussion also. We have seen they have mentioned especially MFI companies, basically unrated MFI companies, basically. So the government is also understanding the importance of the MFI, which was not seen earlier actually. So this is a great time for everybody, and we hope so that the government will also do something for the sector. And whatever has been done, it is also, I think, helping the sector, and hopefully this LTRO money will come to the small MFI also. In this, I think LTRO 2, the one thing which need to be done, which I think the Sadhan and MFin can take up, is they have not categorized MFIs in 2 parts. Because in the NBFC, they have categorized up to 500 crore and 500 to 5,000 crore. So if the MFin and Sadhan can take up and they can, I think, convince to the government, then this the categorization can be done in 2 parts. Then definitely the MFI which are into up to 500 crore, they will get some money. Otherwise, it is very difficult for them to get some money. So friends, I think we have already crossed the time. I will take 1 or 2 questions only. Because we are getting a lot of questions. One is basically the people are asking the collection efficiency and the basically layoffs and hiring in the MFI sectors. So any of you can take up this question, where if you can give some idea whatever the collection efficiency as of today. Although the moratorium period is there, but the collection has already started. So what kind of collections are coming, And do people see and you people see that there will be layoffs or there will be hiring in this sector? So Vivek ji, take up this question, or maybe Abhisheka ji or Sudeep ji.
Ashish ji, let me, Sudeep here, let me just mention how we see this. I think most MFIs are not looking at retrenchments because very clearly the people on ground are the ones who are in touch with the customers. Reality is, when you have to go back to the customers, we need these people. So to the best of my knowledge, any major retrenchments is not happening anywhere. We definitely are not looking at that option. As far as fresh hiring is concerned, I think I would be honest here. I don't think we are looking at that at this stage. Let things settle down, because fresh hiring is only required when you expand in terms of geographically. Other than filling up vacancies here and there, which will continue. But going to fresh geographies, opening new branches, I don't think anybody is really talking about that at this stage. Let things settle down. Let the lockdown be over and all that, and I think that then only that will start. As far as this collection efficiency, to my mind, is a little too premature, because as you know, most of the countries still have lockdown and all those things. There are moratoriums operational, but I can tell you that our conversations with the customers, I think 60% roughly are of the view that as and when we are able to reach out to them, they will like to clear whatever dues they have not been able to pay. 30% is talking about giving little time within which they will clear. They will start paying immediately the current installments, and whatever has been not paid by them over the last, let's say, 1.5 months, they will clear over a period of time. And I think about 10%, and this is, I'm talking about across India, total customers base, about 10% is talking about a little bit of restructuring and this and that. So that's where we are. Collections are happening on ground, but I think ascribing a percentage is a little too premature at this stage.
Okay, great. So Vivek ji, would you like to contribute something?
Ashish ji, one point on the collection process.
Yeah, please, sir.
Actually, as per some ICRA study, that's about 56% is under the green and orange zone, okay, where MFIs are operating, and 42% is still under red zone. What ICRA expects is that the credit cost from 1.5 to it will move to anywhere near 4. Okay, in that way, my suggestion to MFI partners is that those in the people working in the red zone, I think we need to connect with the people, because connect with the people is very important at this point of time. Unless we connect with and rumor mongers and the local politicians should not spoil which they have done in the demonetization time, like which happened in Maharashtra or some parts of Karnataka and some parts of even Madhya Pradesh also. This should not happen under these circumstances. There, I think we need to educate the people, women, to see that yes, this is not a thing. We are with you. We are going to take your assistance. We have already given moratorium. If further loans are given, like the emergency loans and all those things, we should be, though it is in the red zone, through 1 or 2 permissions, we should be contacting these people and keep them updated about our activities, what is going on, and how is the sector moving, and other things. That's only one small suggestion. Yeah.
Okay, great, sir, great. So Abhisheka ji, would you like to contribute something?
Yes, well, as far as that laying off question is concerned, absolutely there is no question of laying off or retrenchment, because we know, means these are the people who have built the institutions, and in times of crisis we have to stand by them, and also we need them. And I'll also add that those who had resigned and were under notice period, many of them decided to pull back, and we have allowed every people to pull back. And also offers we had sent to many of the guys before the COVID situation. So we are honoring those offers also. The offers already sent, we will honor, and all the resigned employees, if they, I think 100% of them decided to join back because they were not sure what will happen in future. We have decided to take them back.
Great, sir. Vivek ji.
Yeah. I think at our level, we are able to do around 15 to 20% collections through digital mode. And even without reaching at the center, we are able to do that. And from my customer segment, I am hearing good news that most of them, majority of them, they are able to pay and they are having sufficient liquidity in their hand. The only challenge is that they want to some more time just to wait and watch how the situation will be there. And once the situation is a little bit normal and we have started lending for the small businesses, I think as Sudeep ji has said that more than 90% customers we will able to recover, I think, by June or July. And in rest of the cases, there may be some restructuring may be required or some additional funding may be required to recover the dues. I think that is my take. And if it is, from some questions I have seen that it is from red, green and orange zone, even in most of the cases, either your branches are in the green zone. Local authorities sometimes they don't permit, even the village panchayats, they are not allowing anyone enter in the villages. So digitally, whatever we can do, we are doing it. And once we are waiting for we are confident that we are not going to lose a single rupee because of the COVID. So that is my own confidence and based on my own feedback from the group.
Okay, great. So I think I was discussing with some of the players in the industry. The people have told that in the coming days there will be a lot many new things will start in the sector. So one is e-agreement or e-agreement will be the new thing which maybe we are not doing as of today, because all women are having the smartphone or maybe their children are having a smartphone. So that is one thing. Another thing, psychometric test, which I think a new thing which is unthoughtable kind of situation in this sector, but people are talking that there will be psychometric test of the borrower. So these three things are there which are the food for thought for the industry, whether we should implement, and the collection, which can be of digital collection kind of situation. So these will be the new, I think, which will strengthen the industry. And I believe with this discussion, we will be in a position to have a lot of takeaways. And in terms of people, process, technology, these are your Vivek ji, I think the practice area. Then Abhishek ji, I think hats off to you for equity. Abhishek ji, people would like to listen from you maybe 1 or 2 points. What should be the ingredient or what should be the Mugli Gutti to the investor so that you can get money on the Series A, Series B in 1 year or 1.5 years. So that's a remarkable. If you can guide to the people who are from the industry that what they should do for bringing the equity, because a lot of people are chasing for equity, but they are getting difficulty to get the investor on board. So that is one area which we need to, I think, Abhishek ji can give maybe within 1 minute some idea. And then Sudeep ji, I think one major discussion which is happening in the industry, whether people diversify in other areas of NBFC, maybe SME lending or maybe HFC lending. Or so you have that very good example where you are into SME lending also, you are into HFC business also. So we would like to understand from you whether it's a right strategy or do you suggest to the industry that they should, not today, but maybe after some time, they should think on it also. So these two things, I think, Abhishek ji and Sudeep ji, if you can take up this question, then we'll end the session.
So thanks, Ashish ji. As far as equity is concerned, I think present the Series B, I think when COVID happened and all, so we thought for a moment that I think we'll have to wait longer. So we all went to our drawing room. We gave 2-3 scenarios to the investor. And I think they also believed in what we are saying. One key thing almost all are doing is you have to be very honest to them. And that is, we gave them 3 scenarios, a very pessimistic scenario also. And said, look, this is the situation as it is. And, but more important, where I would like to give credit to the team and Team Sindhuja is the decision to go with a particular investor, because when we were looking for, there were 3 or 4 interests, and we chose NMI over all those investors. And I think that has paid off well, because an investor who has seen the upheavals in the sector, who has known the sector very well, who has remained invested for the last 10 years. So be it the Andhra crisis or the Demon or the ILFS and now COVID. So they have experienced and they have seen that the sector has bounced back. So I think I would like to give credit only to that extent that we chose NMI, and I think it is for the investors to decide. We gave a very honest view of about what we do. I'll also like to tell many of investors start comparing our company with Satya. I say we are two totally different companies. They have their own views. We have our own. They have their own mindset. We have our own. And also, they are a 1,000 crore plus company, and we are not even 200 crore. So please stop comparing us from Satya and let us lead our own life, and that would be great. And I think because most of the investors we were doing also, because I think, and that is mainly because I think 2 or 3 companies have only come up after demerger, and that is the reason why they do. But we are far less in terms of portfolio, and we have a different strategy, and so is every other company has different strategy. So regarding equity, I would give credit only to myself that the selection of NMI versus the others.
Okay. So good points. I think whatever you have told, like be honest and be transparent. I think that is important. Yeah. So Deepji, can you just give some idea on the diversification?
I will quickly cover the point you're asking, Ashish ji. I think I believe in a slightly different structure. Diversification is definitely important, and in financial services, we have seen over the years, it's always a good strategy to have multiple products. But the fact remains that NBFC MFI is a different animal altogether, because the way you organize your businesses, the way you hire your teams, the way you do the business is, I think you should keep it independent. Yes, there is that 15% criteria within which you can do multiple businesses and this, that, but I think that's suboptimal. If you really want to do it, you should have a separate NBFC and do other businesses in that NBFC. And that's what we do. And teams has to be separate. At our level, we may be able to guide the teams in multiple businesses, but at few levels down, I think it's always better to keep it simple. And in NBFC MFI, the staff, and we all know that because we run that kind of businesses, their skill sets are different. You ask that guy to do a housing loan or some other kind of NBFC product, there'll be utter chaos and confusion. I don't think that is an ideal scenario. Keep it separate, keep it pure play, but yes, at an organization level, at a group level, at some point of time, diversification is a good idea.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you all the panelists for your deliberation, and there are a lot of discussion, lot of takeaways. And thank you all the participants for taking your time and joining. So people have joined from the US also, from other part of the world also. So it's a privilege that on behalf of J.R. Ladda Financial Services, I would like to thank you everybody and wish you a good day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.